Wonderful people of Earth, hello. My name is Brian Holidae, and I have the pleasure of being the moderator for this wonderful event here for Lightbox Expo 2020. My name is Brian Holidae. You guys are probably wondering, who is this guy? Simple enough. I met Patrick once. I was just in the right place at the right time, meeting a really cool artist who was working on some cool stuff here in Montreal. And he just went on to be one of the most talented people that I think we can all agree. And I'll give you guys a little rundown. Patrick is a Los Angeles-based Canadian illustrator who currently serves as an art director and is most recently known for his role as an art director on the Academy Award-winning film Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse. Prior to joining Sony Pictures, Patrick worked as an illustrator and concept artist for clients such as EA Games, LucasArts, Disney TV, DreamWorks, Amazon, Mercedes, McDonald's, Oculus, Baobab, Honda, and Marvel Comics, where he continues his work as a cover artist. Patrick studied illustration at Sheridan College before transferring to the Emily Carr University of Art and Design, where he received his Bachelor of Media Arts in Film and Animation Design. Ladies and gentlemen, Patrick O'Keefe.
Hey.
Hey. Applauding right now. Dave Bleich. Hello, Dave.
Hello.
Dave Bleich currently serves as a color designer for Sony Pictures Animation, where he has worked on such films as the highly anticipated Connected, Spider-Verse, Hotel Transylvania, Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs, and as an art director on the Cloudy with a Chance of Meatballs 2. Dave's other clients include Leica, 20th Century Fox, Google, and Paul McCartney. Paul McCartnney. That's amazing. Prior to working in animation, Dave was a matte painter for such films as The Fifth Element, Titanic, Oh Brother Where Art Thou, Castaway, Monster House, Polar Express, Surf's Up, and Speed Racer. He holds a Master's of Fine Arts from Syracuse and a Bachelor's of Fine Arts from the School of Visual Arts, NYC. He is joining us from New Orleans, Louisiana.
Hello.
We have Nick Hiatt.
College boy, eh?
Nick Hiatt is an art director, matte painter, and concept artist based out of Los Angeles, California. Nick began his career working with such visual effects studios as Digital Domain, Bad Robot, Disney, and Sony ImageWorks. Nick currently owns a visual effects studio that specializes in matte painting, concept art, and 3D environments. Nick has worked on a range of projects such as Star Wars, Thor, Star Trek, Destiny, Call of Duty, Halo, and Lord of the Rings.
Man.
And last but not least, we have John Bell. John Bell is a world-renowned artist and designer with a diverse portfolio of work spanning the past quarter century. His art has contributed to many of the most noteworthy films of our time, including Star Trek IV, Men in Black, Mission Impossible, Contact, AI, Artificial Intelligence, Rango, Pirates 4, The Revenant, as well as my favorite movie, Back to the Future 2, and Back to the Future 3, for which he was nominated for an Academy Award and won a BAFTA. He would then go on to do production design and be nominated for another BAFTA, an Annie Award in DreamWorks' first animated CG feature, Ants. His work expands beyond film into video games and advertising for too many clients to even mention. Throughout his career, John's personal art has been sold in numerous galleries throughout the country and featured on ESPN Sports and in other national publications. John holds a BA in Transportation Design from the Arts Center in Pasadena. Currently, John resides with family in Bend, Oregon. Ladies and gentlemen, round of applause.
Jeez, save some movies for the rest of us, John.
Wow.
Oh man, I'm in good company, that's for sure.
Guys, that is one amazing, like, I feel like we could almost stop right there and just be like, well, we've listed all the amazing accomplishments. We can pat each other on the back and we can just let folks go, cool, this is crazy, this is fun.
Yeah, have a great day, everybody.
There we go. Sign off. Thank you. This is your experience. This is what they've done. But I think more importantly, we probably want to help people understand how this world works. And I think one of the first things is, what was your first paid gig? What was the first thing you did? And not professionally, first thing ever where you as an artist got to make money and you felt like, wow, that's amazing that I could do this. And that led you down a path to where you are today. John, could I start with you?
Start with me? Well, my journey started way back when I was in grade school. I had a friend of mine, Steve Blerd, and his brother had a 60 Camaro, and he wanted a drawing of it. So I did a color pencil drawing of it for him, and he gave me a whole 25 cents.
Oh, damn.
But, buy something soda or a bubble
Awesome.
gum or something, right?
That's how it starts.
Yeah.
My
Make
God.
money on this? This is awesome.
Yeah, that's the thing, right? Like when you're young and you're in art class as a kid, it's like this is a way to express yourself. But until you make money at it, it's usually that kind of sense of this is fun, but you don't. I doing anything never thought like, oh wow, I could make money doing this. So that's why like Patrick, when you and I met, you were working. We had Under Pressure here in Montreal, and I do amazing graffiti work. But I imagine that probably wasn't your first foray. What was your first paid gig?
Actually, my first paid gig was doing not so dissimilar to John's story, is writing people's names in like graffiti hand styles. At the time, I was like, I don't know, 7th grade, and I was starting to do graffiti, and kids would, like pay me a nickel or buy me. I was a poor kid, so they'd like buy me a French fries, at lunch, and I would do up their little name and some hand styles, So it was graffiti kind of from day one for me.
That's pretty cool, man.
Dave, what did you have?
For me, it was getting paid like $5 or a couple of smokes, to paint like Metallica covers on the back of jean jackets, things like that. I never did a Journey album cover, I just had to keep it. I couldn't get the gradients right or anything, so But I had friends who were like, "Hey, could you do this for me? It'd be awesome." And I looking back at it now, I'm sure it was really bad, but they loved it. So hey, it's all good. And at the time when you're painting that stuff, you're like, this is awesome.
Yeah. And it
It's
was.
just, I'll never get to these levels again. This is it. This is the height of artistic expression.
It's like Metallica and Van Halen, Diver Down or something like that.
Throw some Striper in there.
Yeah, man. Yeah, the Queensryche, Iron Maiden.
Scorpions.
There we go.
No, I don't remember that one.
I just dated myself.
And Nick, what was yours? What was your first foray into the art world?
My first paid gig was for Sandals Hotel Resort doing Photoshop work. And I went from working a minimum wage job at $5.15 an hour to $15 an hour. And I thought it was a god. It was awesome.
Sandals.
Sandals. That's great.
Yep. All
Big
those
time over here.
All their print media.
Nice.
The beaches are just 2 people on it. Nope, I cloned them out. It was like 50.
Big time over here. I'm getting French fry money. You're getting 15 an hour, man.
Yeah. Yes.
Did you get to go down to the Bahamas or anything?
I was gonna say, was there like an added bonus? Like, hey, let's go down to Sandals Resort. Kick your feet
Unfortunately
up.
not. Yeah. But I was in Miami, so close enough, right?
Okay. All right.
And then what would you guys say, do from that? So Nick, for you, that kind of sounds like a professional industry type gig. That's you're using Photoshop. You're getting in there. for the rest of you, what was like your first professional industry gig? Patrick, let's start with you.
When I was like 16, my older sister was working at a at a PR agency in Toronto, and they needed an insert for like 17 or Teen Bot magazine that would be like a zine for Johnson & Johnson, like skincare. And at the time I was drawing a lot of girls and stuff. And so she showed my artwork to an art director there, and they hired me up. And I actually got paid like $1,000 to do this thing. It took me like 6 weeks or something. Yeah, bro. You go buy a deep fryer with that kind of money. But I had the same thing as you, Nick, where I was like, oh my Lord, this is the most money in the world. Like this. And at the time I was working at like a coffee shop, and I was immediately just like, I'm out. Peace. Wow. Mic drop. I'm going to go do artwork for a living. And it gave me a lot of confidence really early on to just dive right into it.
That's
awesome. Right on, man. That's great.
Dave, did you have something similar? Because I like the idea that first check leads to a lot of confidence.
Well, I mean, confidence. I mean, I think when I got out of Syracuse, this was 95, and I was still waiting. I was just, hitting every visual effects company. There weren't a lot of them at that time. Like, the majors, ILM, Rhythm and Hughes, DD. I can't name a couple others, but at the moment, but I was fortunate enough. I got the chance to stay in Syracuse. I was working for an animation company called Animotion, and since I had an illustration background, what they were doing is they were working on this game called King's Quest and Torrance Passage, and then I was getting paid to actually do the final line drawings of the animation. So a friend of mine and some other artists were doing all these in betweens, all 2D, and I would sit there and do like the final line because I had a lot of experience. I had a steady hand to do quick fine line drawings, and I can hand them over. So I think I was paid for that probably like $8 an hour or something at most. You worked. I had a lot of fun. I didn't know where it was going. I didn't know where I was ending up, but it was a great opportunity. And then from there, it just took off. I got a chance to go west. So that's great.
John, your first professional industry style gig.
Ooh. Well, my career started as a car designer. So coming out of Art Center, I got hired at General Motors to work on their advanced concept group in Detroit. And so that was my first industry gig. And I stayed in Detroit for about 2 years. And, it was fun, but Detroit wasn't my city at the time of my life. So I kind of skated out of there. I got a phone call one night from a guy who worked at Atari in California. And
now you've dated yourself.
Send me a portfolio. And I did. And I got a job at Atari, which brought me to California.
Right on. That's so cool.
My first day.
So cool.
Yeah.
Wow.
Looking at Atari, I just watched High Score on Netflix, and they talk about that whole Atari growing and building, and that sounded like such an amazing place. So that sounds really cool. I can only imagine what that was like.
I'll have to check that out. Is John in it?
No.
Yeah. He should have been in it.
Oh man, you never know.
I wouldn't be surprised. I was with John the day that Back to the Future 2 was like Back to the Future 2 Day, and your name was like in the newspaper for the Miami whatever. And I wouldn't be surprised to see John in a documentary like that.
I won't start talking about Back to the Future 2 because I will take up a whole extra hour. But I will ask you guys, the stories you just told is like your first foray, the first big check. It gave you the confidence, or it gave you the structure because you're now working, you're seeing a check. But what would you say was your big break as an artist? And Nick, I would start with you.
Sure. Yeah. My first gig in like the film industry was for the Chronicles of Riddick at Rhythm and Hughes.
Amazing.
So at that time, I was a texture painter. I didn't quite have the chops or the experience to be a matte painter at the time, but I was matte painting and training. And the Chronicles of Riddick was my first gig. Yeah. And I drove all the way from Miami to California in 3 days for a 3-day gig.
Yeah.
It was a big risk, and I had everything in a U-Haul. And that 3-day gig turned into a 3-year gig. So it was that's kind of what launched it.
I know that feeling driving cross country with like all of a sudden it's like, all right, you got to start in a week and a half. I left Syracuse in the car and went to Digital Domain.
Yeah, I pressed in on the project and I ran outside and I drove. This was Friday night. I rolled in Monday morning, like straight to Rhythm and Hues, like probably stink.
When I got on the Spider-Verse, we moved I was living at Nick's place, and we threw everything in a truck eventually. And I hadn't read the script because I just got on the movie, and my wife was reading me the script while I was driving the U-Haul down the 5 to get to LA in time to get started on Monday.
Damn. John, do you have to drive across the country for a dope job story? Because that.
My drive across country first time was coming across for Art Center, and I was in a 1974 Honda Civic, which is about 6 feet long and about 2 feet wide.
Yeah.
It was not only me, but my parents wanted to come along to say goodbye to me and leave me to college. So 3 of us in the Honda Civic for 3 days coming across country.
I will say,
we broke down in Texas somewhere, and oddly enough, this is like the universe looking out for me on the road, because we broke down at this nowhereville in Texas and got lunch, and outside when we walked back out to the car, a Honda racing team was outside with their car. They patched the car together long enough so we could get to Albuquerque and really get it, sorted out.
Wow. That's a story. Oh my God.
That's a song.
I feel like John's life needs to be a movie. Like, so when you have stuff like that, where you walk out of place and the Honda racing team is on the side of the road fixing it, like, dude.
Unbelievable. Yeah. Just, it's a matter, I think we're going to get into this later, but the whole career for me, at least, I don't know how you guys are, but the whole career for me was being in the right place at the right time. It was all so much luck and timing. Multiple stories around that.
Totally.
I feel like you could still touch on that, because that still ties into the big break. Like, I joke that my big break of doing stuff like this was just right place, right time. A friend of mine asked me to meet and interview Spike Lee once for something, and it led to a bunch of other people asking me if I was down to interview, and it's just like I don't have the chops to talk to Spike Lee, but I managed not to pass out or upset him to the point where he walked away, and people considered that an impressive skill, and here I am. You know what I mean? So,
yeah,
for you guys, like Patrick, for you, like, what's that experience? What's that like lucky moment where you're just like, oh snap,
man? There's so many. But my like big break was I was working as an animation studio doing storyboard as kind of as like an internship as college was ending in 2008. And the animation industry in Vancouver was kind of dying at the time. And my director had, I guess, lunch with a buddy of his who was an art director at EA Games. And they were talking about how they needed a concept artist, but somebody who could also do graffiti. And it was like I stayed up all weekend pumping out drawings of cars because there was a Need for Speed game. Cars driving past walls of graffiti. And I got in and got the interview and met that's where I started to meet like some of the incredible people that'd be my mentors. But I definitely remember getting that phone call saying, you got the gig. I was just graduating. I went to my graduation on Friday, my last day of work at the animation studio Saturday. Oh, wow. And then Monday I went to work at EA Games for Need for Speed. And I remember waking up Monday morning and just feeling like the luckiest guy in the world. But it was totally like right place, right time, but with the right portfolio. I think that's the thing that usually isn't included in that story is like opportunity knocks and you were looking through the peephole on the other side of the door, are waiting for it, looking for it everywhere you go.
That's good. I like that.
I would agree with that, Patrick, because when I got out of Syracuse, I didn't understand the whole idea of like opportunity at the time. It was like I sent out this portfolio, I had all this information, and I was waiting probably about 6 to 7 months. It was very discouraging. It was just like, am I ever going to get a job? And then when the opportunity happened to go work for Digital Domain, it took a while. So at time you're like, all right, you just keep plugging away and keep doing your artwork and keep trying to build your portfolio and keep trying to learn. But eventually the opportunity, it was all timing. They had a project that came in. I was available. They needed a body in there, and the ability to have my background at the time, which was illustration with computer graphics. So I was very flexible and very knowledgeable of certain applications at the time, like with Alias Wavefront and Prisms and Soft Image and stuff. So I was exposed to it, so I can get in there enough to be dangerous, and then I can work my way around and be taught the proprietary stuff, like at the time Nuke, which is probably industry standard right now. But I got in there, had the opportunity to learn from people and to work on Fifth Element. To here's your painting, or here's your, now you got to set this. And then we were working on Silicon Graphics, so it wasn't multi-layers. You were painting one painting at the time. So you're painting atmosphere in and stuff. And then we started to come up with tricks like paint like all these different mats, and the compositors can do different things. But learning, it's a whole new game for me, and had to have a lot of confidence in yourself, and especially reach out for help when needed.
That's exciting. Yep.
Yeah, the timing is such a big aspect. We're going to talk more about how we all became art directors, but now that I am one thing I realized is I used to reach out to art directors all the time and be like, I'm ready. And they're like, cool, let's have a relationship. And I used to look at it very one-dimensionally, like, no, hire me.
Yeah.
Instead of no, hire me now. Instead of realizing it's like, Justin Thompson, who you guys all know, a production designer at Sony Pictures, I met him through Dave, who I met through Nick, who then 6 or 7 years later wrote me a green card application and then hired me at Sony. Like, it took 7 years for that to pay off. And we've become great friends since. And so it's like, you never know. Don't expect every email to be returned with you're hired. It's those relationships that take days, weeks, decades to build that will end up leading to some of your great opportunities.
Oh, yeah.
And one of the things, Patrick, you mentioned it when you were talking, you talked about making sure you have the portfolio. I know a lot of people in this room that are watching right now from everywhere are probably wondering, like, well, what are some of the things that you need to make sure as art directors, or is there anything specific that you might notice when someone gives you their portfolio? Like, is there a keen thing that when you were doing it, you were just like, oh, I now know that I should have had this in my portfolio when I want to submit to art directors?
Yeah, I'll kick that off, but I think we can all comment on that. A big thing that I love to see is it's all about, it's two things. It's like, I love seeing that people have great taste. It doesn't even matter about great taste because that's such a subjective thing, but understanding what an artist's taste is, who they are as an artist, what makes them an individual in terms of their voice. Then I like to see the back end of the portfolio kind of filled with the production quality artwork that we need every day, which is like, give me paintings of textures in white light. Let me see an orthographic view of a building. Can you design a car? The stuff that, because there's two types of gigs really, and if you can do both, I find you'll have a long-lasting career, is you can bring something totally unique that is your own when you need to, and then the other 80% of the job you can handle as a professional illustrator, artist, designer, and deliver. And that's what will keep you on a production for years, is if you can deliver on those like day-to-day tasks, prop design, stuff like that.
Yeah.
John?
Well,
for me, I like to see a range of styles and abilities, because we know that working on films or games, you have so many different genres that you're catering to and you're servicing. So if somebody's great at doing sci-fi, well, that's great. If I have a sci-fi project coming up, I'll think of you. But if you can show me you can do a sci-fi, a Western, period piece, organic material, hard surface material, storyboards, can you draw and can you visualize space very well and tell an emotional story? You can get a lot of technicians out there who do some beautiful work, but at times I find things missing. I miss a human element. I miss scale sometimes. Sometimes I'll see portfolios where they have these amazing rooms rendered out, And I go, okay, I kind of understand what the scale of this room is, but if you just take those extra few minutes, put a person in there and show me what the scale is. Or if it's a prop, put a hand in there, put something in there that tells me the scale instantaneously.
All right, Nick, what are things you look for?
Yeah, definitely a broad range of genres and themes, kind of what John was touching on as well. Like if you need some fantasy, you need some sci-fi, you need some reality. And so a broad range so that I know you can do everything, right? Not just one linear thing. Because that linear thing's great. If you're amazing at it, you'll get hired for it, but that's kind of it, right?
Yeah.
And another thing I look for, especially in environment paintings, is lighting and atmosphere. Do you understand depth? Do you understand time of day? Because a lot of times in matte painting, you only get to make one painting for morning, one for night, so you will really need to understand how to mimic, the time of day, depth, atmosphere, and lighting. It's some of the most important things for me for environment paintings, for sure.
Before we go to Dave, just a quick thing is, Nick, when you were doing that for yourself, developing, how did you go about developing that kind of skill to learn that do the different times of days? What's that tip that you'd give someone to be like, this is kind of an approach you could try if they're having issues with it?
Practice. That's the big tip. Just keep doing it. Do a nighttime painting, do a daytime painting, understand cameras. Because, when you're doing a shot at night, there's a whole different range, like, your exposure, things like that. So understand photography, that's a big one. So just, get your skill set.
Okay. And Dave, for you?
I think for me, when it comes to looking at portfolios, and I have looked at a lot in the past, and you can kind of tell that certain portfolios that you're looking at are geared to certain ways. And I mean, all the guys here touched on a lot of things to look at, variety and different genres. The one thing I like to see is, somewhat more of an emotional type of character in your portfolio, meaning like, how are you using composition? How are you using lighting as character? Some of the work for what I'm looking for, or what we're doing is, I work with guys who can render things left and right who are just insane. But I want somebody who's going to come in, and I want to see what kind of ideas they can bring to it. So when I see when I see like a portfolio from a certain college, I kind of already know what I'm going to see. So I kind of have to look in there a little deeper and see that little nugget. What Patrick was talking about was taste. Like, I want to see that brought out a little more. I'm not saying make something all pink and green. I love the color pink. I'm just saying, what can you put into the portfolio that's coming out of you, not what you think is expected? I would definitely try to find ways to come up with different compositions. A good example of how to think about that, like, who are some of your favorite cinematographers or filmmakers or photographers or image makers, and ask yourself why, try to study those, those artists, and see if you can bring that into your work. Lighting, think about lighting, be observant, with your lighting, and try to incorporate that a little more. Just change it up a little bit. I know these instructors have a job and they're kind of telling you to fix your portfolio this way. Okay, shift it a little more and add what you want to add to it. You can't go wrong. Just go for it.
Add a signature, essentially. Have that essence that sticks out.
Yeah,
exactly.
Observing is a great word, that you said there, Dave, because I think that some of the best designers are some of the ones with the best memories, and they're always filing things away, a sunset that they saw on a vacation 12 years ago, or it could be somebody's jacket that they saw on a New York subway, whatever it is. Just cool. Cataloging all those memories and keeping those things in the forefront, because you don't know when you're going to spit them back out and use that color combination, that moment, that feeling for a piece.
Yeah, and to expand on that for a second, and I'm sure you guys all have this, especially Nick, because you go so deep with the matte painting, is like the knowledge and information you gather getting into any project, like little stupid stuff. Like I did like a McDonald's commercial, or I think it was a McDonald's commercial. It's fine. I don't even remember the client, but I remember the research. It was a lot of roadside construction, and I walked around Oakland for a day. It was a Saturday, I had the day off, and I was just taking photos and looking, how are they organizing pylons? Something so silly as that. But now I have like such an institutional knowledge of how a construction site is set up,
Yeah.
and then what happens to it when people work in it for a while. Because you never want it to look like it's the stock photo of anything. You want to know that observed reality of a space and what does it look like when people get into it. I tell all my artists these days when we're talking about set dressing, I'm like, go around your apartment, look at how your stuff clutters. You end up leaving your phone near your keys and your wallet is a few inches. Just get a sense of how things cluster, the gravity of things. And all these projects that we've worked on, you've retained all this knowledge about sometimes the most mundane stuff, but it's about also having an appreciation for it. Like you said, John, like, oh, wow, I really do like how that street sign was slightly off kilter and somebody did put a graffiti sticker right in a nice spot because they were just running away from it when they threw it on. And it feels very observed and unique, and I'm attracted to it.
Yeah, it's all the stuff you won't find on Google. It's all these real life experiences, you know?
Yeah, you have to research. You have to hunt it down. You know, it's just that if you're interested, you will find a way. You'll find that research. You'll find that information. Hunt it down. Mm-hmm. That's the only way that you will get better at a lot of the stuff. I mean, Nick was saying practice, but you also have to hunt it down. Like, figure this stuff out. It's, you know, don't get discouraged. Have fun with it.
Yeah.
I mean, Nick, you can talk about it. You basically started a company because you've gotten so much personal research out there. Your terrain domain thing, right? Like, it's all just the photo scans you're out there doing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and like especially for matte painting work, because it's so photo based anyway, my reference library is like 8 terabytes, massive. and I even have like a specific directory for weather, like cool weather effects. And I'll say, oh, I want to do something cool with weather. I go into my directory, cool weather. Oh, cool, this is great. Get inspired by lighting, the way light reacts to clouds. And like I have a directory for pretty much everything, and I also have one for like inspiration. So I'll just pop in if I'm bored or the juices aren't flowing. I just kind of scroll through these directories like, oh, awesome. This is a great time of day. This is beautiful. So studying reality and being a student of reality is critical for an artist.
Yeah. And because I know there's probably lots of students or aspiring artists watching this, one, like something practical that I could give you is like, it's not a solo pursuit finding reference. We're all on this thread together, mostly because we're just buddies. And giving this talk, but Dave and Dave sends me images all the time of just cool shit he finds online, and I love it. And I go back to Dave and send him stuff, and I hit him up. Remember, I hit you up the other day. I was like, dude, I want to get outside and draw, but it's the apocalypse. You got any good like Tumblrs or blogs of just great photos? And John and I were working together on a project the other day, and I just started shooting him. I was in New York after Spider-Verse came out. And I was just taking photos of me walking around New York. Like, we're so blessed these days to have a great camera in your pocket. And I just walked around New York just taking photos. I just left my phone on video record for an hour, just getting all these accidental New York compositions. And I was just sending them to John, being like, see, this is like the way all these bikes are clustering here, or the funny angle that this building's at. It's like, you can't do it on your own. You need your artistic community. And not just to judge artwork or ask for ideas, but share an inspiration.
Mm-hmm. I was just going to say this is a part of it that as a noob, I don't know any of this stuff, and I find it fascinating that you guys work as such like the observation aspect and the kind of like filing of ideas and things that you can pull from, John, you mentioned a sunset, and then, Patrick, you mentioned like someone slapping a sticker on the wall. And then when you guys end up working together, that sunset combined with that slap, combined with Nick talking about that specific lighting, combined with what they like, that's what makes those moments come together as artists that then create these awesome films and projects that people get to enjoy. And that sounds like such a fun collaborative part, because you guys are forming like Voltron, like there's all these things coming together. You guys, you're gonna.
I like that.
Yeah, that's good. It's important. It's like you don't just show. You're practicing your skills every day, so when you get your gig, you're ready to go. But you're also, and I found more as I got towards art directing, I started to pay more and more attention to, because the skills have gotten to a good place. I should always be working on them. That's why I was asking about people to draw in New York. But I could become more and more concerned with that taste aspect, that reference aspect, and spending my hours saving things, finding things, getting inspired, not just, I'm working on my figure drawing anymore.
I think there's one question that just came up that I feel is pretty good. Why is it that when you start learning more painting 3D, it becomes more daunting compared to when I first started and when it was full stream ahead? How do you not get discouraged with more info? That idea, like the more you see, the more you're like, almost overwhelmed in a way.
Yeah, and 3D especially can be that way, but it's like that because the devil are in the details. The macro view is easy to achieve, and really you see the specifics when you zoom in and when you start getting under the hood and like understanding, okay, there's a lot here. And that's one of the things about 3D is it changes all the time. I mean, I'm still learning new software every week, right? There's always something new coming out. So my advice is to have the hunger to learn, right? And yes, it will be discouraging because you'll hit roadblocks, you'll have software problems, things like that. But, you know, once you get some rewards in by getting great images out, that'll kind of balance out.
Yeah.
Well,
somebody has a, and when it comes to like painting as well, it's somebody has a graph out there, and I'm sure we've all seen it. It's like, oh, everything's amazing, and then your expectations exceed your or your taste and expectations exceed your talent at the time, quote unquote talent. Things flatten out. All of a sudden you get discouraged. Oh, the artwork, you know, like you were saying, oh man, the artwork I was handing over to buddies for quarters. This is the greatest artwork I'll ever create in my life. I'm a genius. Then you start to get exposed to good artwork, and you see some spots in your work where you elevate, but then you do a bad painting, and then you get so discouraged. Oh man, I'm never gonna get back. I'm never gonna get back there.
Suck.
You know. Yeah, I'm never gonna get back there. And then all of a sudden something great comes out, and you, oh man, I'm on top of the world again. I'm the greatest artist who ever lived. And then your expectations catch up to your skills, and all of a sudden you're like, wow, this is garbage. I should be so much better than this. and on and on and on until you develop a drinking problem.
Yeah, I was gonna ask you guys. Oh, sorry, Nick. Go ahead.
I would say one other thing too, like don't be afraid to fail. Like failure is part of learning, and from the ashes of failure, rise of flames of success, right? Like when I was first starting, I would be afraid to like fail, like, oh, this is not working well. But the more you fail, the better you're getting. Each failure is a step on the way to success. So don't get discouraged by that. And those many failures will stack them to one big victory soon.
I was going to ask you guys about influences, because everything you're describing, the scales and moving up, even your idols have gone through that. Who are some of the people that you would look up as a group? Who are some of the people that you've looked up to, and who were some of your influences in becoming an artist and even as an art director? John, you mind if I start with you?
Wow, that's a big meal you just put in front of me.
I'm the chef.
My answer is just John Bell. So.
Well, my first, again, coming back to where I started, it was being a car designer. And all through high school, I was drawing paint schemes for funny cars at the drag races. And my idol at the time was a guy named Kenny Youngblood. You guys probably never even heard of this guy, but I wanted to be the next Kenny Youngblood because I wanted to design paint schemes for race cars. So he was really a big influence to me, and I would write him fan letters all the time, and he would take the time and send back in the mail, real mail, little vignettes of drawings of how to make things look shiny, how to get perspective correct, and all these little details. So he was fantastic, and he was an early influence for me. The other influences, I mean, when I got into doing film work, it was really seeing the work of Nilo Rodis and Joe Johnston and those early Star Wars pieces. So those are my big influential milestones for me.
Nilo, when I talked about my big break, that was one of the guys at EA who was pulling the strings, and it's the guys I looked up to too. And you end up meeting them. I made the joke about John Bell being my hero. because now he's just my buddy. So I can't be my hero anymore. But you end up meeting those. It's a great industry because you can easily meet the influences that you looked up to in this industry, and it can really, it's very rewarding. Sometimes it's not, but there's so many great people in this industry that can help you guide your career.
Yeah, Nilo was the one who hired me at ILM. He took a chance on me. I'd never worked in film before. I sent him, I figured I got nothing to lose. I'm here at Atari. I hate working here. I want to stay in the Bay Area. So I'm going to find out where Lucasfilm is, send up a slide sheet of slides and some storyboards. I'd done a storyboard gig at Atari for a Laserdisc game. And so I sent the work up to him, and he took a chance on me and hired me up there. So I always tell my kids, just put yourself out there. The worst somebody's going to do is say no.
Yeah.
You move on.
Yeah. I think for me, I'll answer it pretty quickly. Sort of the influence. The major influence in my work and becoming an artist was illustrator, artist, filmmaker. His name is Matt Mahern, very prolific, and he kind of opened my eyes when I was a lot younger. Like, this is kind of, who is this person? I just loved his work. I had the opportunity to meet him when he was starting to get into music videos, and he was working on Tracy Chapman's Fast Car video. And I was a junior in high school. A buddy of mine actually was doing a portfolio study with another illustrator. And I had an opportunity to go down to the studio with him, with the class, and meet him. It was thrilling for me. So, seeing his work and through the years and seeing how he's developed and spread out and different avenues of things and not just one thing, they're all just intertwined, like whatever you're doing in this area of study, photography, film, lighting, illustration, painting, they all work together. So Matt was probably the biggest influence in all of my work. It's still to this day. As far as in the industry, I'm just going to say the peers and the people I work with, because they're the ones that inspire me. There are too many people that I know that have, like, even when I was studying to be a matte painter, I was like, oh wow, about this guy, and then I would meet him, and then we would talk, and I would learn from them. But I always wanted more. And then in the animation, there's guys that I work with that are older than me, guys that are a lot younger than me, and I feed off of them, and I hope vice versa, because I think for me, that's how it works.
Yeah.
Nick?
Yeah, I would say some of my biggest influence probably in matte painting would probably be Robert Stromberg, Dylan Cole. Like, these guys are amazing. But one of the most impactful moments I had was when I was working on Surf's Up, Dave. You remember this? And Paul Hussein was there. And getting to sit behind him and watch him paint one day, that changed my life. I'm like, oh my God, this guy's a monster.
Effortless, yes.
Awesome. And just I was like sitting back behind his desk, just watching him. Like, oh my God, this guy's a beast. Awesome. So that really inspired me. Like, I can do this too. Because at the time I was still texture painting, and I was like walking my way into matte painting, trying, slowly. That's actually where I met Dave, one of my first matte gigs. Thanks, buddy.
Yeah, you're welcome. Yeah, man, you're awesome. You earned it. You saved my ass on that film.
Guys, what is because I realize we don't have much time, so there's a few things I wanted to get to. I think one of the first things that a lot of people wonder is, what led you to art directing, and once there, what was the biggest difference you noticed as an art director in comparison to being an artist? Dave, do you want to take that one first?
Sure, I'll start. Be honest, art. I never knew I could be an art director, to be honest, when I was in the animation. It was something I wasn't thinking about that far. I was just happy enough to do visual development and have the opportunity to work on Cloudy, and and I'm working with Justin Thompson and Mike Karinsky's the art director there, and it was an incredible team, and the directors, Phil and Chris, and I didn't really know what it was going to be like. And then the second one came out, and then I was approached by Justin, who's a good friend of mine, and explained, and he offered, and he said, "They're thinking of like you to be the art director." And I didn't even know what to expect. I was like, really? So I was like, okay. And, you know, there was some hesitance. I don't know what this job is. I think I know what this job is. And, you know, he was an incredible friend and also a great mentor in that film, because he actually would help me and encourage me to get my voice onto film. So when I got onto the art director job, I thought I had to take everything on. I mean, everything. And I thought it was going to be one of these jobs where I was like, all right, I have to work pretty much all these crazy hours. And it took me a while to understand and develop trust, because can I let this go? And I needed to develop a trust in a team. Like, I knew I can rely on them, but also I needed to know that they can rely on each other. So if I'm not in that day, or I'm stuck in a meeting, because basically when you're an art director, you're not working from the hours of 9 to 5. You have to find time to work before 9 o'clock and after 5 p.m.
Yeah.
So I had to learn that. And I also had to learn time management. So I really had to develop and learn trust. And so, but I think becoming an art director on that film, it was, you know, it gave me a voice in the movie. But eventually you're going to have to sit back and you're going to have to guide people. You're going to have to deal with a lot of different personalities, and you're going to have to deal with a lot of different talents and what people are good at, what people's strengths are, and you have to play to them. And it's really what it is. You know, I'm trying to be fast with that information, but I think you have to understand that you're not going to be doing a lot of painting that you thought you were going to be doing. You have to have other people do that. You have to take all that information, your taste and what you've learned, and channel it and communicate those ideas to somebody else. And there are going to be times you're going to have to step in and fix it or get it to what the director wants.
Yeah.
So.
Nick?
Yeah, my path to art director was kind of, you know, it was somewhat linear. My first real gig, kind of like as a supervisor, was a matte painting soup at Sony. I did that for a couple of years, and I learned a lot about managing teams, managing people, managing schedules, and, you know, bidding as well. So after I did that, I started my own company,
Right.
And I took a lot of those lessons I learned as a matte soup into the company, and I, you know, ran a small little shop. And then I got the opportunity to work for J.J. Abrams' Bad Robot. They started a visual effects wing called Kelvin Optical, and that was for Star Wars. And that's when my first art director gig was on Episode 7, Star Trek Beyond, and 10 Cloverfield Lane. Oh, and I learned a lot of very valuable lessons in there. And like Dave said, you don't spend a lot of time painting like you thought you would. You do a lot of managing, a lot of like macro view, getting everything in line, kind of like a herding sheep, you know, make sure everything's all cohesive. You know, I did that for a year and a half. It was definitely a great experience. I learned a ton, you know, and I learned that I really, really love painting. And I wasn't, and that I didn't feel as fulfilled, right? So after I did that for 3 gigs, I came back to my shop, and that's kind of where I'm at now, because art directing was an amazing experience. I learned a ton, but I found that I really, really was passionate about doing the work more so than managing a team, right? And I know that everyone's got their own story and their own, you know, desires and everything. And in the end, that was what I learned from being an art director. I love the paint.
Well, John, because touching on what Dave and Nick said, it sounds like you don't get to be, you know, hands-on with the art as much as in the creation directly with putting pen to paper, as one might say. You know, Nick's example of herding the sheep and having that God's eye view almost. What was your experience like?
Well, I started being an art director. It was more when I was at ILM, and I was an effects art director. So it was much smaller scale. You know, you weren't dealing with, if you were on an effects film, it was just the one art director on it. It would just be me, and if there was another film, it would be some other guy. So I was handling the chores of doing storyboarding and doing whatever design work needed to be done that wasn't done in the production office. So that was my first experience being an art director. To become an art director on live action on Jurassic, it was just through the generosity of Rick Carter, production designer. I'd worked with him on Back to the Future 2, and he was very generous with me on that project. And I was actually taking a break from ILM in '91, and he tracked me down in Montana. I was on a road trip, and he said, "Well, I want you to come down and be an art director on Jurassic Park." And I I've never been an art director. He goes, you can do it. So
right.
we got this little dinosaur movie. You'll be fine.
Yeah. I was just gonna say.
So I went down there, not like Dave was saying, not wanting. I never really wanted to be a live action art director. I just kind of happened into it. And I couldn't turn Rick down. He'd been so kind to me in the past, and so I loved working with him. And I knew some of the other people who were going to be working on it. So I jumped into it, and you just, like Dave was saying, you really have to trust the people who are already established on the team. You have to know their strengths and weaknesses, and you have to be adaptable to different personalities. These projects are long, 2-3 years, maybe sometimes. So it's just managing the personalities and trusting people. And like Dave was saying, you just have to let some of this stuff go. And you might not draw as much, or even if you can just draw at dinner after work, you do a little scribble on a napkin, you're going to give it to Leslie, or you're going to give it to Tom, or whoever it is. Say, here's what I was thinking last night. Can you establish this and flesh it out for me?
Patrick, on your end, continuing with the theme of like being an art director, but then also could you tell us a little bit about what it was like the first time overseeing and managing a team? I know Dave touched on how you have to trust people, but what's like the management aspect of it? Because it's one thing to trust people, but like the day-to-day interacting with some people and that vibe of wanting to convey exactly what you're looking for, but also still keeping those relationships solid, right? Because it sounds like a lot of the stuff that you guys did, you were also working alongside some of these people before you got the opportunity. So that also changes the relationship and the dynamic with some of them. So what was that like, Patrick?
Yeah, the trust aspect of it's really interesting because it also goes both ways. I'm the most junior of the art directors in this group. And it really happened because my production designer, who I was doing visual development for, he trusted me. And he trusted me to carry his vision, and there was an alignment of tastes. At the time, I wanted to be an art director, and I had an abstract idea of what that was. It just seemed like I'm a more influential artist and more connected to the filmmaking process than turning out paintings every day. When I became an art director, I realized the same thing everybody else does, is you're actually going to start doing a lot less artwork, and you are more like the composer. You can't play every instrument in the symphony. You need everybody to play their part. And one thing I learned as an art director, which I kind of wish I knew as an artist and now know, is you kind of do just need to play your part as an artist. It's great to go above and beyond, but you might not have a vision of the whole landscape of what's going on. And so you need, the drummer to play the drums and the guitar player to play the guitar, so we can get this whole thing working together, because the end product is definitely the culmination of all these people. But when it comes to the idea of like managing, quote unquote, managing these people, it is about trusting them, but also I've found it's about it's my responsibility to communicate to them what is needed, and then provide the inspiration. A big part of that job is providing the inspiration and learning how to communicate with people in a way to ensure they hear what you are saying. I kind of have this mental checklist with an artist. It's like I tell them what I need and provide them inspiration. Now, if the artwork comes back and it's completely off basis, I need to make sure that they are understanding what the ask is. And sometimes it might be I'm using the wrong words or they're not hearing it right, but it doesn't matter if I'm saying it right and they're hearing it wrong. The onus is on me as the art director to ensure that the artists are understanding the asks from me. That is my job. Anytime an artist shows up and the artwork is completely off basis and they apologize, it's not a failure on their part. It's a failure on the art director's part to convey the true ask of what's happening here. And if they don't understand, then I got to change the way I'm communicating to them to ensure that they're getting the right direction they need. And constantly understanding who the artists are. Strange people, and they're all different, and they all inspiration is such an abstract concept, and so always adapting your communication styles and providing different types of inspiration. Some artists need to be talked to every day. sometimes, especially now in COVID, there's certain artists I call every day just to let them think out loud to somebody in the room. There's other artists that are old school isolationists, and they're just like, thanks for my assignment. I'll see you in 3 days. Here's my assignment. I nailed it. There's no rhyme or reason to it, and neither is better than the other. It's not about that, because like the symphony, you need everyone to play together.
Yeah.
When you were mentioning about how the onus is on you to communicate when the artist doesn't get it right, do you ever feel like, how do you communicate that without making them feel like they got it wrong, and without it seeming like, because there is still kind of a power dynamic, right? So, I mean, I'm speaking as an outsider, so I don't know if you guys are all, as artists, are cool with it. But that power dynamic, I feel like you still kind of have to have a little bit of the I'm still in charge. So you can't take full credit for the mess up all the time, right? Because then that kind of affects the relationship a little bit. From, again, outsider looking in, that's what I would think maybe. So in that situation, how do you communicate with someone without the sense of like you messed up, or without the sense of like, oh, I can't communicate to you, because you still want them to respect you. And if it's just constantly them getting the sense like he never knows how to explain this, and John, you're laughing a little bit already. So
John's turning red.
Yeah, John's just like, I've dealt with this before.
Oh my God. Yeah. Go ahead.
I'll just say one thing. It's very clear for all the artists listening, and it's something you certainly learn as a senior artist. And as you become an art director, you realize there is a huge difference between good and bad art and right and wrong art.
Right.
Okay.
Just and when it's wrong, it's always important to say, and it's always true, this is beautiful artwork. I'd hang a picture of this on my wall. But the ask has changed or is shifted, or we didn't align properly on what the ask was. And as beautiful as this artwork is, it's not the right artwork for this particular need.
Yeah, exactly.
But John, I want to hear where you were going.
Well, it's when the art doesn't hit its mark, and you're approaching somebody about it. I always keep in mind that the artwork, it's only here to serve a purpose. It's not gallery worthy. I mean, it's gallery worthy, but it's not gallery art we're doing here. We're working in a medium where the medium is constantly moving. And so the work has to speak to that, and we always have to be reminded that it's just a single frame that we're really painting up for somebody to get an idea. And so my style really came of art directing people came from my experiences at ILM. And at ILM, everybody was very frank, but very fair. There was no mean-spiritedness about it. Mm-hmm. They come up to you and say, that's not working. You're going to have to change this or move this, move that. Well, when I started to use that tact, in some experiences it worked well. In other experiences, I had an experience at DreamWorks where I made somebody cry because they didn't like being spoken to in a frank way. I came over and I said, this isn't working. We're going to need to change this. You're going to have to do this over. And it turns out she went off to the side and she started to cry about it. And I hated, and I still don't like the idea of having to mince my words and to coddle these artists and their delicate egos. If you can't take a frank comment, we're on a clock all the time. Things have to keep moving. I can't give you 15 minutes to explain to you what I could explain to you in 30 seconds. So I'm gonna, not mean, I'm just gonna give you my response and then we're gonna move on, okay? And so some people can't handle that and some people can.
And if anything, it was most likely constructive. It wasn't like you were just telling the person, this sucks.
Exactly. It's constructive criticism. We're moving this ball along. You didn't hit the mark. You've got to change this. Let's go. Yeah.
Yeah. It's good to remember as an artist, when you hear feedback like that, which we all have heard, it's like the art director is on your side. They're trying to give you, they're trying to give you the information so you can do your best job. And the project can be a hit, which is only going to lead to like a more successful awesome, enjoyable career. They're never out to get, well, they're not almost never out to get you.
There's a few cases. Yeah, we definitely have to remember what we're doing is production art. It's work to serve a purpose, like John said. So taking it personally is never the way to go. And as you get comments, as you're growing, as you're getting up your career, you start to understand this more and more. Like, hey, I understand. He's just trying to get the ship rolling, and especially the producers just trying to keep the ship rolling.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's never an attack on you or your skills. It's just like, we're trying to solve this problem. You don't own this. This isn't yours. This isn't your image. Anybody's. I mean, I've worked on images that are going to get handed over, and say Patrick's going to work on it, or vice versa. I worked on a film where I was just berated by a certain director that we all know, who worked on a big budget movie about a ship sinking, and then. But all of a sudden you just can't take that. You are going to take it like, holy crap. But the other thing is that it builds you. You have people around you that you work with. The fellow artists are working with you. You're never alone. Reach out and ask for help. The art director's on your side. They're just trying to get stuff done. He or she is responsible. So they're just trying to make sure this stuff flows, and they have to meet the budgets, and they have to get stuff out. There's other people down the line that have to work on this. So, it's going to happen.
And John's what was it, frank and fair comment is great, and I think it's important. Like, John, you learned that by seeing it and understood it was understood that that's the way it was. It wasn't. So it's what I've realized is, like, sometimes, especially during COVID, it's like some artists are having a slightly harder time, and it's important. No, I don't want any of these artists to fail. I'm trying to set them all up for success as much as I can. And so if I'm being too frank and fair, I got to go out of my way and let certain people know, hey, this is the style. This is how we're going to roll. You don't take it personal. If you haven't learned that lesson yet, you're going to learn it today. I love you. And you're an amazing artist. But there's $100 million train leaving the station, and we got to make sure everybody is on it. And for your success as much as mine, as much as the film's.
Yeah. I mean, at the end of the day, we're all lucky if our image, that initial image that we painted or created, ends up on the big screen, because it can go through so many changes and so many adaptations. So
I have one more thing. As an artist with that, if you're the person that's the artist on the receiving end, frank and fair, it's also your onus to go reach out to your other team members and, like, talk to them, and pick up the phone or email, just like, hey, I'm having trouble with this, or what was that scene all about? Don't just sit there and wait for them to come by, because you just wasted 6 hours for an answer, which you could have gotten 6 minutes ago. So.
Yeah. And on that note, you're as an artist, your art director may hold what feels like the keys to your career, but in fact, it's you and it's the artists around you. I mean, I met all these guys except for Nick, but John and Dave, I met working with them, for the most part. Like that's, and with Nick, the same thing. It's like our relationship grew not one of us art directing the other, but working together as artists. And then as the tide rises, so do all the ships. And then you start calling your buddies up. Hey, John, can you give me 6 weeks on a project? And all of a sudden now I'm art directing John Bill. What an incredible experience. But we know each other, and I know how John likes to work. And so there isn't going to be a lot of, he knows it's going to be frank and fair. I don't have to give him a pat on the back every time, because he understands. And so as you become artists and you're working your way to becoming an art director, even if that's what if in fact that is what you want, always, like Dave says, talk to your fellow artists that are all around you.
Yeah.
Guys, this was wonderful. The comments have been so positive. There's so many people that had so many great things to say. I think, as someone, again, like I said, I'm a kid on the outside looking in. I'm a huge geek. I love all the stuff you guys have all worked on. You're all amazing artists. On behalf of all the fans who've gone to experience amazing projects, past, present, and future, thank you, genuinely. To the people in the chat and the people watching on the different platforms, I definitely can say thank you also, because I can tell that they very much appreciate this talk. It was very informative, discussed a lot of stuff. There's even more stuff that I was hoping to get to. I apologize to some of you. I know you had a whole bunch of questions that I didn't get a chance to, but I think that there's a lot of stuff covered here that was really important. And it was great. Make sure to follow all of them on social media. I put their Instagrams underneath here, scrolling at the bottom. Take them down, start following. I know Patrick's going to be doing some stuff on IG, reviewing. I know one of the major questions that you all received, one of the major questions in the chat was, how do I send you art for frank and fair discussion? Now that we've used that term. So, if anything, if you guys on your IGs, on your Instagrams, if you want to put like a little link or something to give people a place where they can submit stuff, or maybe if people could, I don't want to tell people to direct message you because that might get overwhelming, because there's a lot of people in the room who are already really excited and want to continue talking to all of you. But I would say if you are one of the people who wants to reach out to these artists, understand that they are during COVID, still working from home, still very busy. If they can, they will get back to you as quickly as possible. If they don't take it personally. It's, obviously this is just the situation that the world we're in. But that said, guys, this has been a great experience. Lightbox Expo 2020, artist to art director. I would like to thank you, Patrick, Dave, Nick, and John.
Thank you.
My
And a big shout out to Brian. Thank you so much for putting this together. And
Yes,
the host with the most.
I had a blast. Thanks so much, guys. So, guys, that's everything. Thank you again for tuning in.
Thank you all.
Thanks.
Thanks, everybody.
Right on.
Continue checking out all the stuff on the Lightbox Expo. It's still ongoing, right? When's the last day? There's still a whole bunch of stuff.
It goes until the end of tomorrow, and
yeah, that's what I thought. Okay.
Yeah, going to the end of tomorrow. Myself, Nick might swing by, and we might do some portfolio reviews at 5:00. And there's prints up in the print shop, shop.o'keefeartists.com. I'm sure my wife's screaming in the other room because she actually set up the link, and I probably got it wrong. And check everyone out on Instagram, and we hope, I've been keeping an eye on the comments here, and so grateful that everyone came through. Thank you all so much.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much.
Take care, guys.
Yep.
Okay,
Have a good weekend. Stay safe.
Yep.
Yes.
Stay safe.